Thanks for taking time to listen to this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Take a minute to go to therealresq.com to check out these and other great deals from our sponsors here at the Real ResQ. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Frye Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. And RescueSwimmerShop.com, official high-quality apparel featuring the silhouette. Frye Eastern. They dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Frye Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at frye-eastern.com. SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help your helicopter training. They train daytime, nighttime, aerial firefighting, hoist, longline, fast rope, rappel, and more. They can assist your program with standardization and safety checks or just an FAA annual refresher. With the certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew, they are ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. Plus, right now, SR3 is offering 10% off anything in their web store with the promo code, all capital letters, Real ResQ, REALRESQ. Plus, they are offering 10% from their partners Petzl and their equipment. All you got to do is send an email to info@sr3rescueconcepts.com. Mention this podcast, the Real ResQ podcast, and they'll take care of the rest. 15 years ago, photographer and Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 526, Chris Razak, created an iconic photograph. This photograph depicted the silhouette of a helicopter rescue swimmer reaching down for an outstretched hand in need against the American flag backdrop. The image went viral and became a symbol worldwide for the rescue community and the people they help. Its wild popularity inspired Chris to launch RescueSwimmerShop.com, a web store offering official high-quality apparel featuring his evocative image, the silhouette. T-shirts, hats, patches, and stickers featuring the silhouette are available at RescueSwimmerShop.com, including the flagship design So Others May Live. Follow Chris and his story on Instagram with the handle @RescueSwimmerShop. And if you are a rescue swimmer, support rescue swimmers, or just tell people you are one at the bar, this gear is definitely for you. When you get to the website, RescueSwimmerShop.com, enter the promo code, all lowercase, one word, RESCUE, RESCUE, for 10% off your order. I love having the opportunity to sit down with some of the rescue swimmers that started the actual rate. In this episode, we get to talk to a guy who was stationed in San Francisco, and one of his cases, they took his experience and they brought it to Advanced Rescue Swimmer School, and that's where we started learning how to swim into the rocks and up on cliffs, and when the waves break in here, and how to transition here and cave stuff. So all that stuff that happened in Advanced, this is one of the reasons that it happened. So please welcome United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 35, Mr. Steve Frye. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real ResQ podcast. Today I've got with me my man that started this whole rescue swimmer Coast Guard thing. It's awesome to have him here. Mr. Steve Frye, United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 35. What's up, buddy?
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
Man, I am fantastic. Good morning to you. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So it's good stuff. I hear about all you guys back in the old school stuff that paved the way for us younger guys. And yeah, you guys had one heck of a go.
It, it was a giant learning curve for the entire Coast Guard.
Yeah, like people that pilots that didn't want you to flipping a coin. Let me flip a coin, see if I'm going to take you or the pump. Oh, Butch Flight to talk about stuff, and Steve Hathaway, Labo, George Cavallo, all these guys that came out and was telling us just everything that's happened. So I'm excited to get your perspective of it, because you were in a couple of units, actually, one of them being San Francisco, and I haven't had anybody on the podcast from San Francisco. So this is going to be fun. I'm excited. But because I know you a little bit, and if you don't mind, just introduce yourself to the world and who you are, where you are, what your background is, and how you got into search and rescue.
Well, so I actually went and joined the Coast Guard back in the 70s. It was early 79. And, back then I went to the recruiter, and I had gone to the Navy, and they like, yeah, we want you next week. Let's go. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. And then I went to talk to the Coast Guard guy, and he's like, yeah, you can go to any school, and I don't need you for 7 months. I've got all my billets filled in. And I'm like, okay. So it was not a really hard sale. And he just said, you're going to hate boot camp. You'll love the Coast Guard. So I said, let's go.
Nice.
But anyway, we waited. I went to a buoy tender for a couple of years, and I was waiting for A school, which was ASM school at that time in Lakehurst, New Jersey. Went there, and then Sitka was my first air station out of there, and then Cape Cod, San Francisco for 7 years, and then back to the Cape, as they always say, back to the Cape.
Back to the Cape.
Yeah.
Because I'm from Boston, I get that. Most people don't understand. We say, oh, I'm going to the Cape. They're like, where's the Cape? No, Cape Cod. Yeah, it's the Cape. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, back at the Cape.
Yeah, like you're going to the vineyard. I'm going to the vineyard. It's Martha's Vineyard, or Martha's Vineyard if you're from there. Nice. When you got into A school, and it being the ASM rate, there were not swimmers yet. That was still parachute packing and all that stuff, right? Survival gear.
And it was also at the Navy school. So a lot of times later in my career, people would say like, oh, the donut at E-City. I said, I've never been to E-City. And they're like, wait a minute, I don't understand. How can you be in aviation and you don't know the donut in E-City? I'm like, okay. So I went to Lakehurst, New Jersey, and I went to Pensacola, Florida, both Navy schools for the Coast Guard. And I'm going like, I don't know, no habla.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. All right, so now that we know you've never seen Elizabeth City. By the way, for everybody that doesn't know, in Elizabeth City, which I don't believe is there anymore, I'd have to look into it, but they used to have what's called the donut, and the donut was the barracks, but it was a big round donut, and you could run around the entire thing, and all the rooms were in, there was no corners in the building. It was just a big round building. So, oh, that's funny. I find that actually quite amusing that you were never there. That's good. But all right, so now you made it through A school and you get to your first unit. Now, you guys back in the day were hoist operators as well as, drop masters and everything else, because like swimmer was almost secondary. So what was your first case?
Oh, well, so yeah, there were no swimmers then. And I went through the flight mech hoist operator syllabus, and I became an H3 flight mech. And I mean, I love doing that. My dad was a mechanic, and I love working on helicopters and doing the hoisting. Actually, I do, one thing, first case, I remember we flew down to the end of Baranof Island, which Sitka is on Baranof Island in the southeast part of Alaska. And like a 6-week-old baby had gotten burned because the parents had taken the baby from, they live there, and it's like a community of like 50 people. and the baby had some kind of breathing issue. So they had to make like this steam tent for it. And then the hot water ended up spilling onto the baby. And then we had to do a medevac. We land on like the lava at low tide outside this little town at the end of Baranof Island. And then we medevac the baby back to the hospital in Sitka.
Wow.
But with the H3 back then, you took the patient, you took the mother, you took the father, you just loaded everybody in. It was like a giant bus.
Yeah. Holy smoke. So once you bring the baby back to Sitka, drop it off and.
Yep. But yeah, a lot of second degree burns, but again, that's like 40 years ago.
Yeah, a minute ago. I love how it still stands out to you. That's pretty funny. We actually talk about that with a couple other guys, like the big cases for us that really stand out. So, or little cases, I should say, that kind of stand out. But, well, you sent me actually, it's not even that you sent me, because I actually Googled your name and I found it before you sent it to me. So, which makes that even cooler. But you earned yourself a Coast Guard medal for a case you did out of San Francisco. And I'd love to get into that. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read the write-up, and then you can just take us through it. Is that cool?
Sure.
All right. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Medal to Stephen R. Frye, Aviation Survivalman First Class, United States Coast Guard. The President of the United States of America takes pleasure in presenting the Coast Guard Medal to Survivalman First Class Stephen R. Frye, United States Coast Guard, for extraordinary heroism while serving as rescue swimmer aboard Coast Guard Helicopter 1484 on the evening of April 1, 1991. The aircrew was engaged in a perilous rescue of two men trapped on the base of a jagged rock cliffs in the San Francisco coast. With no escape route and rapidly rising tide, the survivors were swept into the rocky crevasse where they were being battered by 8 to 10 foot breaking waves. In approaching darkness, Pedestal Frye was deployed from the helicopter into the dangerous seas. Immediately upon entering the water, he was swept onto a rock crevasse near the survivors. He swam through the rocky coastline waters in heavy surf to reach the survivors, despite sustaining injuries to himself while being driven into the rocks and underwater numerous times. He continued to persevere. Upon reaching the victims, he quickly assessed their condition and prepared to transport the one nearly lifeless survivor through the surf to a position where he could be hoisted to safety. Fully aware of the risk involved and the nearing physical exhaustion, Pedestal Frye went back to complete the rescue of the second survivor. Pedestal Frye demonstrated remarkable initiative, exceptional fortitude, and a daring in spite of imminent personal danger in the rescue. His courage and devotion to duty are most heartily commended, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Steve, that is one heck of a case. Holy cow.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been 30 years.
Yeah, 1991 to now. But like I've flown down through San Francisco. Like I know a little bit of the area. I was in Humboldt Bay, so I know like the coastline, those jagged edges, the rocks, the crevasses. I know exactly what you're talking about and what they're saying in the award. But you're battling that because you get guys that get stuck on those areas and with a rising tide. Like, what was the call out? What do you remember what you got called for?
Yeah, well, I remember that whole day very well, actually.
I'm sure
And
you do.
so, well, not talking about the backside, but anyway, we went on a night flight. So when they say approaching darkness, it was dark.
Of course it was dark and stormy.
So we actually had gone over to work a night flight, and I had already done a deployment. We had already, we were going to do MINs and things like that. So we were working with a 41 footer from Yerba Buena Island. And we said, we briefed, this is the first evolution, second evolution, whatever. I did the first night evolution, came back in. They said, like, get back in, and closing the door. And I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't brief this. What's going on? get the headsets on. They're going like, we got a case. We're going right from basically Alcatraz right over the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. They're like, we got a call. We get over there, and probably a 70 to 100-foot high cliff. You can see the fire department guys, their reflective gear is showing, and they're like shining lights down into the water. And eventually we spot these two guys way back in a crevice, you know, with an overhanging ledge. And I'm like, well, actually, we only spotted one. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden I go, I think there's a second guy there. And he looked like he's floating face down.
Holy cow.
Well, this isn't good. And there's just absolutely no way to get down in there except from the ocean.
Wow. So
we didn't take a lot of time to discuss it and said, let's go for it. And we went night deployment, and you know, and we'll talk about advanced rescue swimmer school in a little bit, but that had a lot to play with it. What is known as advanced rescue swimmer school now.
Yeah.
But I used some of those techniques that I learned. You know, you don't want to be 1.5 feet from a rock cliff when the wave breaks, because that energy is just going to throw you into the rock. So if you see a wave coming, you jump onto the rock, and then you're just already there. You just have the wave on you, and you're not driven into the rock. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does to me.
But you know, so using that, I was able to maneuver around and finally get into the crevice and into the mouth of the cave, more or less. And the one guy that was still standing, he kind of pushed the guy that was laying down, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll take this body. And as I rolled him over to do the cross chest carry, he gasped, and I went, holy crap, this guy's still alive.
Wow.
And so, you know, we're all the way in and pushed back in there, and probably in knee deep water or so by the time, you know, knee to waist deep water. And of course I turn around to head back out, and sets of waves of 3 are coming in, and I'm trying to time it, you know, at night, and you can't really see what's coming in. And I turn around and you look up, and I'm like, holy crap, that's a wave, and it's got to be 8 to 10 foot, and it's about to break, which is where it's going to release all its energy. So duck diving, we go to the bottom, grab whatever rocks you can, slide in, move out, you know, keep working out, duck diving under the waves, grabbing whatever I could on the bottom to keep from sliding back into the, you know, coastline. Eventually, you know, this cross chest carrying this guy, get out through the surf. I don't remember how long it took, but, you know, I was pretty jacked up, and got the guy into the basket, and they were recovering him, and I'm like, there's no way I can go get this other guy right now. And I don't even know how long this guy's gonna last. Wow. So use the old PRC 90, contacted the helicopter, told them to just send the hook down, pick me up. I knew Presidio was a 3-minute flight underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. They already had an ambulance waiting at the pad. I said, let's get this guy over to the ambulance, and I need a 5-minute break. It's just the way it was.
Yeah, yeah.
We got him over there, transferred him off, and, you know, it was one of those things. I got him in the helicopter, established basic vitals. I mean, he was able to open his eyes, follow me a little bit. He's breathing, he's got a pulse. Later on, I found out his body core temperature was 78 degrees when he got into the hospital. He should have been dead. Anyway, we transferred him off, get back in, you know, the head's still turning, got back out to get the other guy, and they're like, let's go get this guy. And what do you think? And of course I'm like, yeah, I can do it. In the back of my head, like, I'm gonna try.
Wow.
Anyway, go back in, get all the way in there, and I grabbed that guy, and we started turning around to go out. And once again, as soon as I turned around, another wave smacked us, and he got thrown out of my arms. I went tossing and turning. we got driven all the way back into the crevice, and I'm going like, yeah, this isn't good.
My
Uh,
God.
Anyway, as we got pushed back there, it's like all white, foamy, whatever. And I'm there like, all right, we're just going to wait for this wave to release, and we'll stand up, get out of there. And I waited, kind of like when you're in the dunker, wait for all buffeting to stop. You're going to get out, and blah, blah, blah. I go, okay, it's calmed down. I go to get up, and I'm under a ledge, and I'm like, oh man, that's not good. I'm still underwater. And I actually thought about pulling my SAR 1 because I go, no, once I do that, I'm going to be too buoyant. I'm not going to be able to duck dive. And again, old guy stuff. Tony Curtis playing Houdini when he gets dropped into the ice water.
Yeah.
And he comes out, and in the movie, he's finding air up underneath the ice until he can find his way. I'm starting to think I got to find an air pocket underneath this ledge. Anyway, I end up coming out, reestablished with the victim, and we started making our way out again, and just wave after wave. And as I mentioned, I listened to Steve Hathaway's podcast, and it's, you just got to get mad, and you just got to want it. You can't give up. You just got to keep doing it. And away we did. We got out of there, and I think his body core temperature was 84 or 86, so he wasn't as bad off, but still, that's pretty severely hypothermic. And both 18-year-old kids got trapped in there from low tide, walking around the coastline. And there we go.
Steve, that's gnarly. It talks about, and actually you sent me an article. This is one of the things that I definitely had gone and read over, but the article had said you sustained some pretty good injuries to your leg, to your ribs, to your back. So when you were getting tossed around with the waves, you were literally getting tossed around and like uncontrollably into the rocks.
Oh, so before you had electronic games, pinball was the game. I don't know if anybody remembers pinball games. I was a pinball. Just kind of.
And the score's running up with Steve. Ding, 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 ding.
Especially when you get between the bumper and an edge, and it just starts really going.
Oh, man. Steve, that's crazy. Wow. So now, all right, when you get out, you get like, I can picture it now too. Like you get this kid, the second kid into the basket. Did you just sit in the water for a second and be like, and just kind of breathe it out?
Yeah, I don't know. And that whole thing was, yeah, just kind of say, I'm glad there's not a third person in there. I was pretty spent.
Steve, that's crazy. Dang, man. Well done. Well, you and the whole crew. I mean, I know it takes a full crew, but ooh.
Yeah. So, and as I mentioned before, there was the advanced rescue swimmer school, and I had been out there in San Fran for 5 years at that point, 4-5 years. And as we talked about before, everybody's doing a lot of port and starboard. There's just, they think 5 people is enough for a 4-person duty section. And you got, people that are sick, people on leave, people that need to be trained, whatever. And, but we used to get people, and it's like, you get a second class from Traverse City. This is their second station. They've ever only been in fresh water and not really understand current and surf and everything else. And it's like, hey, listen, you guys need these tools in your tool bag to be able to work in this area. And we started a program at San Fran probably 2 or 3 years before the case, where we would work with the park rangers and just kind of go over the geography of the area and learn how to work in there. And
did you do that prior to your case?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, so you knew how the wave dynamic was going to go against Oh, that makes such a difference.
Oh, it made a huge difference. But see, here's the thing is we used to go and train, and I remember looking at other swimmers and we'd look and we'd like, don't go in the cave. That's the answer is just don't go in. So that's going through my head. I'm
As
going
you're
like,
swimming into the cave.
I'm going like, we're not supposed to be doing this. We decided in training, don't go in the cave. But you got to go in the cave.
Got to go in the cave. Your victims are in the cave. You got to go in the cave.
But yeah, during training, we always said, don't, here's what we learned. Don't go in the cave.
Holy smoke. Wow. That's crazy. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit to Advanced Rescue Swimmers, Advanced Rescue Swimmer School, which is up in Astoria, Oregon. It's what all of us swimmers go to. Like, you graduate A school, you go to your uni, you get qualified, boom, then all of a sudden you're dropped into advanced school. That was an amazing training for me. I loved it. I was able to go 2 times for sure. I think it might have been a third, but I apologize, I don't remember. 2 for sure though. And amazing training. And that's exactly what you get talking about with getting pushed up on the rocks and how to ride that wave and judge the wave in and out of caves. Like, we actually swam into the cave, while we were there, but we had a very benign cave up in Astoria. It was not.
Yeah, I know. I picked it out.
Oh, see, so it was enough where you're like, oh yeah, the current will really jack you up, but nobody was ever going to die in that in particular cave, at least as far as I know. But and then cliff ops, and we got Advanced Rescue Swimmer School really got into it. So where did you come into play to make all that happen?
So after that case, we looked at a bunch of different things. Like, our fins are great for out in more calm water. I'm just saying, but once you get into a surf area and the water is made up of foam, it's air and water, you don't get a lot of push out of those fins. So, we looked at duck fins. We looked at wearing helmets. Everybody's wearing helmets a lot now.
I do. I never leave the aircraft without a helmet. Swim helmet.
Well, we didn't have them. You had your hood.
Yeah.
That was what you had. And so a lot of things came, a lot of questions were being asked. And then the stand team at the time reached out to me and said, hey, listen, there's a need for a more advanced rescue swimmer. We go and we do stuff in the pool and we learn. I went to Navy Rescue Swimmer School. We learned to get 25-year-old fit pilots that just ejected from an aircraft out of the water. No one ever said the guy that's fishing, the guy that fell off the boat, the guy that's in the sinking boat, the guy that's walking along the cliff.
Yeah.
Grandma
never taking a walk on the beach, you get swept out. Yeah.
Exactly.
The kid, same thing, get swept out. Yeah.
So you need to interface with what you're really doing. And it's great basic training in swimmer school, fitness and techniques, but you needed that advanced rescue swimmer element to get out there and actually do the interface between what we're actually doing and what we know what to do. And I think, once the stand team got on board, and I don't remember how that all happened. I know they came to me. We went up to Astoria and the surf rescue school at the Columbia River Bar area. We spent quite a bit of time up there and talking about how this is all going to develop and this, can Astoria support this? Is this a great place? And as you already know, that's where it's located.
Yes.
And
I thought it was a great place, great school.
A sidebar to this, and nothing against Master Chief Jellicoska or Jim Sherman, but those guys were up there, and we had gone out and done the surf thing one day, and then it's like, okay, we're just going to swim back into the lighthouse or whatever. So I'm starting, we're all in our gear and we're all swimming in, and no offense, Master Chief, he looked a little tired, so I grabbed him and I put him in a cross chest carry, and I started carrying him into shore. And so, and I don't know if you ever met him. He's a big guy, and so I'm toting him along and I'm like, all right, buddy tow's going pretty good. I can just tow him, 150 yards into shore, into the bay. And then all of a sudden it's getting like, man, he is really heavy. I'm like, I'm really having to work my ass off here.
Can
And
you help
so,
kick just a little bit? Can you throw a guy a bone?
no, well, here's the thing. Quinny, is by the time I get all the way in there, I look back, Jim Sherman had grabbed onto to Master Chief's fins, and then another guy grabbed onto Jim Sherman's fins, and then another guy. So I'm towing like 4 freaking guys. And I'm going like, this is like an anchor. And they'll confirm that story.
All right, duly noted. We're gonna call all of them out.
And I was like, I look back and they're all laughing. And I'm like, man, I was really having to work.
Guys are a bunch of dicks.
And it was fun.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Wow. Well, that's one heck of a case to turn into, everything that's turned into. And I will say one more thing about advanced rescue swimmer school too, is that advanced school got better and better as things happened throughout our rate. You had, unfortunately, it was like a mishap with Tristan, who got stuck in the cave. That was another cave rescue. You had, forgive me, I don't remember his name, but he fell off the cliff. So now we have cliff ops. You don't ever disconnect. The wave that you're talking about, how to get onto rocks as the wave is coming in. Breakers, because you're swimming in the middle of the Columbia River as breakers are coming in, getting out through the surf. We had a lot of drills and a lot of things. So it's a week-long school that just hammers down on some great skills. So yeah, well done. I appreciate you, because that was fun for me.
Yeah, as I said, I thought it was a great way, as the management will say, you need those tools in your tool bag when you need to use them.
Yeah. And like you said, you got guys that came from, a freshwater unit, Detroit, Traverse City, it's not big surf places. You're just not there. And even down in, Florida has its times where you get a hurricane come through, but for the most part, Florida waves are not, they're not West Coast waves. There is a difference for sure. So, but nice. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. So anything else? What else you got? Any other good stories?
Well, we can't go on all day, but we could.
We could. I'm okay with it.
So, all right. So just to, and I actually, 30 years later, I've just never really talked about this, but the day of that rescue, which happened to be April 1st, and when people get to know me, it's like April Fool's Day. They think it's a big joke because Steve does jokes, but so it was kind of perfect that it was a April 1st joke. But before we left on that case, the flight mechanic was like, he came up to me, and it was a night flight to get a avionicsman his flight mech quals. He was cross training, and we had the flight instructor for the flight mechs. The pilots needed stuff. I was there, and he came up to me, he says, we got to cancel the flight. And I'm going, what's the matter? He goes, I've just got a bad feeling. He goes, I got a bad feeling. I said, well, is the helicopter broke? Is whatever? And I just remember him talking to me before we went on the night flight. And he's like, I just can't tell you. I got a bad feeling. And after that case and everything, I go, I don't know what you had. You had some kind of premonition, but it got wacky.
April Fools.
But,
just kidding.
And we never did finish the night flight. We
Well, no,
we call it a night.
It all busted up. Gosh.
But yeah. So, and with that, a lot of things that people didn't talk about way back then. I mean, that was even right around the time that we even started the first Iraqi freedom or whatever war, and a lot of stuff has come out after that where you get counseling, everything like that. I have to tell you, I was in at that point 11 or 12 years, and I was thinking, I don't know. I said, I'm hearing these stories of these people out in 25, 30-foot waves, and I'm like, I really wasn't sure I was going to stay in the Coast Guard for a while. I was fighting with that for the whole summer of 1991. But as things turn out, you know, you're busy doing your port and starboard and everything. And I ended up having duty on Thanksgiving Day, 1991. I actually was supposed to be on leave. One of the swimmers was down. I had my leave canceled. I've got duty. And so the call comes in on Thanksgiving Day about I'm going to say around a 35-foot sailboat, 70 miles off of Santa Cruz, Monterey Bay. And as you know, the West Coast, it wasn't really, you know, in the middle of the day, so it wasn't dark and stormy, but you get winds, and the winds were whipping up 40, 50 knots. So the waves were, I'm figuring 20, 25-foot waves, you know, seas when we were out there.
Yeah.
And again, we're in the H3. We call it the Flight of Steves because it was, I was Steve, the swimmer. There was Steve, the flight mech, Steve, the avionicsman, Steve, the co-pilot, and the pilot was Randy. So we just said, this is the Flight of Steves. Anyway, we get out there, and this couple, which I thought they were elderly then, but now I'm their age. They were in their mid 60s. And they wanted to come off their boat. You know, their hull had split and they were 70 miles off. Their sailboat was getting beat up pretty bad. And we said, all right, well, we got to get them off. And you kids just can't hoist to a sailboat. The mast is whipping all around, all the lines. And they didn't have survival suits. We were able to take some of our survival suits, get them on a trail line, fly upwind and deliver them. It's kind of like flying a kite upside down. You know how a kite will go up into the air, only suits are hanging off the trail line way back behind your tail rotor, and you just kind of back them in over the edge of the boat. Anyway, we delivered them some survival suits. They put them on. We convinced them one at a time, you got to get in the water. We'll come and get you. And I remember, you know, again, this is 6 months out from the cave, and I remember looking down, and I'd never been deployed into seas that big. And the waves are coming up, and I just said to the pilot, I said, hey, do me a favor before we do this. I said, just pull into a hover. And he said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I just want to know that you can handle a hover, because 70 miles might be just outside me swimming back 70 miles to.
Holy shit.
I said, because, you know, we had already talked about leaving people on scene and stuff. Anyway.
That's hilarious. Steve, that's awesome.
So I said, I just want to make sure you can hold a hover and get me back. Anyway, we get in the door, and, you know, back then, 15 feet. You're supposed to deploy from 15 feet. Well, when we first started the program, we were like, go higher, you know, this is 25, go higher, 30, 35, like, go higher. We got to know what we're doing. Well, by this time I was looking down there, and it's like, I'm 35 feet up in the crest, you know, the trough of the wave. And I'm like, the guy taps me on the shoulder. I'm like, get down lower. And the pilot's now looking at a wave coming up the cockpit. He says, I ain't getting any lower. So,
holy shit.
Time it, and it's only 15, 20 feet if you get into the crest of the wave versus the trough of the wave, because you're going to add another 20, 25-foot fall. Anyway, deployed from the aircraft, and this is when I have coined the term swimming on the incline plane. So, you know, we do a lot of stuff swimming in the pool, and it's a 25-yard pool or whatever. And I'm like, I'm swimming the length of the pool down the backside of this wave. That's great. Now I got to swim up the other side. And oh, by the way, the top 6 feet is breaking whitewater.
Oh, God.
But anyway, got over to the first survivor, and you know, that was all swell. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock position, deliver the basket. It would have been nice to be able to do a double aviator so we wouldn't have to be there longer, but I'm like, got them in there, stabilize the basket, take them up, bear hook, take me up. Now we got to go find the sailboat this whole evolution that's taken 10 minutes or so, that boat with 50 knot winds is a couple miles down coast. We go reestablish with that, with the boat again, get the next person out into the water. We're going to do it again. Same thing, go over, pick that guy up. And that went pretty well too. I'm saying, hey, this is all right. I mean, I like not getting bashed into the rocks, you know, we're just kind of skimming down the waves.
What a difference.
Almost,
one case to another.
Almost fun. So I get him into the basket and that goes well. I said, okay, waiting for the bear hook, gonna go to my harness. And I'm sure you've been on training flights when you're not necessarily directly underneath the helicopter when they pull you up, and you know, you want to be directly underneath, so you just come straight up.
That's the goal.
Well, I'm holding the cable, you know, as the waves are breaking over me because I don't want any appendages or anything caught in the cable, waiting for this second bear hook pickup. Well, the strap was probably on there, but you know, I'm just hooking to my harness, and all of a sudden I feel the cable starting to tighten up, and I'm still out at 3 o'clock, and I'm going like, this wave is going to come out from underneath me, and the hoist is now 200 feet per second coming up, trying to take up the slack. I came out of the water so fast, I thought my fins were still left in there. I felt like a bullet coming out of the barrel of a gun. And I'm at the 3 o'clock position. And I go like, ooh, this is gonna be a hell of a ride. So I popped out of that wave, and I was so far out that I'm holding onto the 3/16 inch cable, and I'm gonna go like, I'm gonna go underneath the helicopter. And as I watch the cable wrap around the bottom of the helicopter, I'm gonna like, I'm gonna end up looking at the avionics man. And I telling you, I came around underneath the bottom of the helicopter, and I started wondering, I don't think there's enough for me to go up into the rotor blade on the other side. But I started thinking about it. What? Essentially, when I stopped, I was like this, and I'm looking at you right now, and I'm like, that's the co-pilot. And I'm like, hey, dude.
What's up?
At least I'm not going in the rotor blade, and now we're back. And you know, the cable has so much give, so it's not really shocking on your back. Oh, yeah.
Sarcasm. Insert sarcasm.
And by the way, that was before we had those nice harnesses now that go down around your butt. This is the ones that are right underneath your scapula, and just everything's right on your shoulders and back. Anyway, the ride back around to see the flight mech wasn't as bad, and eventually we got up into the helicopter, and there we go. We got those two folks off of their boat and back to Santa Cruz or wherever the heck we dropped them off. Was an awesome Thanksgiving day, and after that, I knew I could finish my career. I was like, I'm good. I'm all right.
I got this. Steve, that's like 7 months apart, you know, like you're getting bashed into rocks, and then 7 months later, you're in 20, 25 foot swells, pulling people off the sailboat.
Yeah.
That is crazy awesome. Like, man, I am here all day. Let's keep going, because you're in Cape Cod. And I know Cape Cod had some gnarly stuff. We listened to Labo. It's unreal over there. So
yeah, Cape Cod, as far as cold, probably a night flight up by New Hampshire, right at the mouth of the Merrimack River. So you're from Boston, you know where that is.
Oh yeah, yeah. You get Portsmouth.
And so you know the ice chunks.
Yeah.
The ice chunks are coming down the Merrimack River. We're out there at night, and as we know, our dry suits aren't necessarily totally dry. We're out there, and it's, you know, you used to have to say at 28 degrees, salt water freezes. So when we would get in the cabin, we'd be like, okay, no more swimmer ops, because we're just getting iced back here. And let's just say I was down there, and I'm like, they're like, signal with the Mark 13 night end of the flare. Okay, so we're doing that. And typically you grab the other half that's not warm. I'm hugging the flare to keep warm. And then I'm there like, I'm gonna pop the day in just to get the heat off the other side with the orange smoke.
Oh
It's
my
just like,
gosh.
it's a little chilly that night.
Yeah.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
I remember doing stuff like that up in Alaska too. Like you get cold. You get cold. You know, you get ice chunks bumping into you. You're like, what the heck was that?
Um,
Oh,
and if we jump back a little bit to, I know you were very interested in the beginning. We did, it took a lot for us to get people to realize we could be useful. And I had been at Cape Cod before I went to San Fran, and we used to go and do air shows with the Canadians,
nice.
Windsor, Detroit, and they had what they called Sartex. And I don't know how much you know about this, but the Sartex had what we called was like, man, that's state of the art stuff back in 1982 or whatever.
Okay.
And the way their operations used to work was the pilots would be in charge. They'd get on scene. Once they got on scene, they said, okay, Sartec, how do you want to do this? You tell us what you want us to do. You're the one that's going to coordinate ground, interface with the helicopter, and we'll put you wherever you want. And they actually had quick release pigtails that, instead of getting spun all the way around and wait for them to get you on the deck, if they felt they were 3 feet off deck, they could pop off, and then they had an extra little pigtail that they could rehook to go back up. But we always said, yeah, this was before we had rescue swimmers, and we're like, why don't we have Sartex? Why don't we have people that can coordinate what's going on the ground with what the helicopter can do? We could be so much more efficient than just dropping down a basket or, having people climb in and coordinate, well, everything that you guys do now.
Right. It's a great idea. It's brilliant, actually. Like to have somebody that knows what they're doing on the ground, coordinate with the guys in the air it's a
right. It seems like common sense, but it took a lot to get people to figure that out. And so you gotta balance. I'm on the West Coast, first class, rescue swimmer, operational, probably the senior operational guy for a few years on the whole West Coast in the 80s, because as you know, a lot of people that came out of the rate that went to Pensacola, you used to put like, PO1, PO2, PO3 on your white t-shirt when you're swimming and doing your pool work. Guys used to go out there day one and it just said DOR.
Yeah. Drop
just
on request. Boom.
So
out. Yeah. Guys that think they can do it, and they don't have quite the mindset to get through it.
Right. And so we went out to a boat that was sinking off of Bodega Bay, which again, this whole area was the great white capital of the world between Farallon Islands, Bodega Bay, and Santa Cruz back in the day.
Yeah. We used to see them quite a bit up in Humboldt too.
Yeah. And so this boat is taking on water. We got there right before it was dark. It was, it was not a stormy night, but it was, just your typical 10 foot swells, no breaking surf, just a West Coast swell. And we got there, we delivered the pump, and he couldn't get the pump started. And I'm like, put me down on the boat. Well, the 44 is going to be here in a little bit. Let's wait for them, because it's early in the program. We don't want to, and I kind of get it. The aircraft commanders were like, yeah, I don't want to put another person in danger. Just, you don't even have to put me on the boat. Just, I'll go over there, get the pump started. That's our gear. We'll figure out what's wrong. No. Now it's getting dark. 44 foot is still not there. 44 footer gets there and says, it's dark. We can't get anybody on board. Well, what do you think now, Steve? I said, I think I would have liked to do this 45 minutes ago when it was still light, but sure, let's go for it now.
You know what? Because we like to make things harder. Yeah.
So again, night deployment, upwind, work your way over to the vessel, and it's like, you know what it's like when you get up to a boat and it's like, how am I going to get up there? I'm in the water and it's a 4 or 5 foot rise there. Well, thankfully it was 8 to 10 foot swells and the boat was sinking. So the swells were almost going over the back. And I said, oh, this is easy. I'm just going to time the swell. And I ride an 8-foot wave up to the back and I turn around, set my ass on the side of the boat and the swell goes away. And I'm like, hey, I didn't even have to work hard. Swing my feet in, get my fins off. Easy breezy, get the pump running. It just had grounded out with the spark plug at the top, pumping it out. And I'm like, great. And I said, hey, don't send another pump until I see what's wrong with this. Meanwhile, while I'm troubleshooting, I get that pump running. We're dewatering the vessel. They're trying to drop another pump, only it's nighttime now. They get the outrigger of the boat's outrigger up into the sponson of the H3. They kick the pump out from 35 feet, which splits the case. And now that pump is pretty much useless. But more bugging me was they go like, I'm like, all right, 44 is on scene. I've got the pump running. I'm ready for pickup. And I'm looking at their tail rotor. We're low on fuel. We're going to leave you there, Steve. And they're like, what? I was in a wetsuit at now 10 o'clock at night, and now your adrenaline's running down. The boat's safe. Now I've got a line from the 44 footer to this boat. We're under tow with a 44 footer going back to Bodega Bay. And I'm like, now I'm starting to get cold. And you know, the fishermen's there like, well, you can put these on. I said, the pants that are standing in the corner and smell like dead fish. Yeah. And I climbed into them, but you know, it was only for 4 hours. By 2 a.m, we were back in Bodega Bay.
Yeah. At that point, you had already gone through anger and now you're just sleepy. You're like,
yeah, I was done with DABDA.
I'm so angry at them for leaving me. They just put me down in the daytime. I could have had this whole thing done.
Exactly. And I'd like to think that was one of the earlier on cases when the pilot said, hey, that worked out pretty well for us.
Yeah.
Let's just think about using them a little more often.
You know, I'll tell you what, I want to take that case and I just want to break that down a little bit and Monday morning quarterbacking, because there are a lot of people out there that don't quite understand how useful the guy is that can go down and repair the gear that we work on. Like the pump, that was our thing. That's what we did. We inspected the pumps once a month. We ran them. We did overhauls. We did oil changes. We knew those pumps inside and out. Like if we're delivering it from the aircraft, send me down. Send me with it. I'll just fire it up. We'll get it going and say, hey, you need another one? I got you. You know, but to have a guy on the ground, I believe me, I understand the mindset and the idea of the pilots and sending another guy into the imminent danger. But that is what we are trained to do. Put us in. Put me in, coach. I got it.
Yeah. And again, it was as simple as the pump when it got deployed, that ground out switch just bumped up to the spark plug. You just bend that back, pump started, first pull. Go. Do it. Would have been done during the day.
Yeah. 45 minutes earlier. Instead, you're burning fuel, waiting for somebody else to show up on scene.
Right. And then saying, bye, Steve.
Oh, man. That's terrible. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Good job, Steve. Same day. Again.
You have to do a lot of, as I mentioned, I listened to Steve Hathaway's podcast, and I don't want to cover all that, but you guys went in depth about the mental psyche or whatever. You just can't be a quitter, and you've got to want to get it done. And that's a very important aspect of that. I don't know if they still had I think it was Senior Chief Kabicki, and I knew him at swimmer school, I think. I don't know, Earl Kabicki. Anyway, he coined a term. I remember hearing it. What the mind can conceive, the body will achieve.
Wow.
Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I have not heard that one. I like that.
So whatever you can conceive, the body will achieve. And, that was a big point of, doing all of the stuff that we did to get through school and cases.
Yeah. Well, I will
Mm.
say that, like even A school now, they've done a very good job when I went through and what they're doing now to prepare everybody for what's really out there. Like swimmer school is no joke. And for anybody that's thinking of going, like you better get your game face on, because it's a tough school to get through, but it is exactly what you need, because that's what you're going to see in the real world. And it's no joke in the real world too. Like Steve, look what you're doing. You're doing 20-foot waves. You're getting smashed into rocks.
Yeah. But, and there was a lot of friction at the beginning, and I tried to be a buffer between what we needed to do and the mindset of changing the Coast Guard. And I retired as an ASM, and I know it's ASTs now, but I used to get rubbed when, I'm the chief and they're like, oh, let's go down to the swimmer shop. I said, it's an ASM shop. I was like, no, we're going to go to the swimmer shop. I go, like, okay, then I'm not going to see you in operations. I'll meet you at the pilot shop. And they're going, what do you mean the pilot shop? I said, well, that's the pilot shop up there. Operations. Isn't that where all your pilots hang out? Yeah. Just we're ASMs, they're ADs. It just helped to further the divide at the time amongst people, and prima donnas, the whole bit. But I'm long time way back.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Even so, my youngest son's actually a H-65 pilot.
Oh, good for him.
And so, he'll say things like that. He'll say, so Dad, I was down in the swimmer shop. I said, it's an AST shop, but go ahead.
If like at this point in the game, it's every one of us call it the swimmer shop. Yeah, it's swimmer shop.
I know.
Sorry, Steve.
It's okay.
Oh, that's funny. That's good stuff. This is awesome.
It's okay. Actually, some people said you shouldn't say this one, Steve. I said, well, I'm going to tell this one because some people find it funny.
Yes. I'm going to enjoy it.
And
which is all that really matters. You know this, right? Because this is our interview. This is you and me.
Okay. So new in the game, we start having ELTs, emergency locating transmitters. Satellites are being put.
Yeah, those.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
So come on duty, and they're like, yeah, we're getting a ELT out by the fair lawns. You guys got to go get that thing secured or whatever. It's just, we don't know what's up. We had a helicopter fly over a vessel earlier. They didn't seem to be in distress, but this has just been going on for hours. Okay, so fly out there, DF, direction find the vessel. It's got to be that boat. Can't hail them, can't do whatever. It's like, all right, Steve, jump out, swim over, see what's going on in the boat. There's no problem. Climb up on board. Again, this was fun because it's daylight. There's maybe a 1 or 2 foot little swell going on. It's actually, this is just a day. And climb up on board, and two folks are on there, and the boats, I can hear the engine running, but I immediately realized there's going to be a communication issue because these folks are, I'm going to say, perhaps Vietnamese fishermen or whatever. Okay. And I'm like, hey, I'm Steve. I'm a rescue swimmer. You guys doing okay? What can I help you with? And it's San Francisco transmission. And I'm like, okay, I think what I understand is your vessel's not your engine's working, but your transmission's not. San Francisco transmission. And I'm like, okay, I think I got it. Your boat's working, but you can't go into drive. That's why you're out here, and there's a problem. Group rescue swimmer, go ahead, swimmer. They need a tow. Okay, swimmer, can you get us the vessel owner's name? You stand by. So I go into the pilot house and I'm trying to communicate that I need to know vessel owner. I don't speak any other language like this, but I'm looking, owner of the vessel. How do I communicate that to you? And I'm going through the drawers and all of a sudden I find this piece of paper and it's got like address for San Francisco with a vessel, whatever, paperwork.
Yep.
And I'm like, group rescue swimmer. Yeah, go ahead, swimmer. It's like, vessel owner, Nimpaqua. Of course, now you start into November, Oscar, Papa, Kilo, Oscar, it's like, and by the way, can we get a translator?
Oh my God.
So they're, see, and other swimmers get this because they've been there, but you're just trying to take care of this situation. They're like, okay, we're going to get on that swimmer. Now, can you secure the ELT? And I'm like, stand by. So now I'm looking around the boat and I see where it looks like the ELT should be mounted, because it's kind of looks like a life ring, but it's not there. So I'm pointing, I'm like, ELT, EPIRB, emergency locating beacon. And finally, I just look at the guy and I start going and I look at him, Queenie, and I go, boo, 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 boo. Just like you're saying, it's like, I speak ELT. Now I continue to look around the vessel, and the next thing I know, about 3 minutes later, he's standing there and he's got the EPIRB in his hand. And I'm like, perfect. It's in the on position, off position. Group swimmer, yeah. I think we've taken care of this. Yeah, ELT secured. Let's get out of here.
Oh my God.
But I often wonder what people think when you get onto a vessel and you're dressed in an orange suit with black fins, mask and snorkel, SAR-1, and you're just like, and somebody's looking at you going, pew, pew. It's like, I don't know.
Hilarious. That's awesome.
We get it done.
I'll take the next story. I'll keep going.
Really?
Yeah.
This communication wasn't as bad. This guy was German or European descent. He fell off his windsurfing board in the bay, and the incoming tide. And I know you guys talked about how, like where Steve was, there's a 7 knot current going through there when tides come in and out.
Right.
So this guy gets knocked off his windboard. He's holding on to the bridge, one of the bridges going through San Francisco Bay. It wasn't the Golden Gate. It wasn't the Bay Bridge. It was the next one, the High Rise Bridge or something.
So
anyway,
the Oakland Bridge?
Further down, like San Mateo.
Oh, okay. Yep.
San Mateo Bridge, probably. Anyway, report comes in, man's underneath the San Mateo Bridge waving his arms. We get over there. Steve, want to go see? Yeah, sure, no problem. Jump in, eddy out behind the stanchion, so for those people that aren't sure about reading currents and whatnot, but when water goes around a rock or a pier or something, it's an eddy and it's a backflow of water. So swimming up into that point was easy. Getting up to where you could get on is where you had to go out into that 7 knot current. And, I'm like, all right, let's put it into high gear. And I start swimming, and people that remember G.I. Joe, lifelike hair, G.I. Joe, whatever. In the 60s, they had one that you put baking soda in his back and his arms would start to move when you put him in the pool.
Yeah, yeah.
And basically, that's what I looked like when I was trying to swim up along there. I'm just like, but anyway, we got up onto the bridge thing and I get to this guy and I'm like, hey, I'm Steve. Hey, how you doing? You okay? Any injuries or something? First thing he looked at me, he goes, how much cost? I mean, what do you mean how much cost? I said,
Oh, God.
We're just going to get you out of the bridge out from underneath here and we're going to go for a ride in the hill. How much pay? And I'm like, hey, my name's Steve. What do I call you? He says, call me George. He knew a little bit of English. I don't know what his real name was, but he said to call him George. So we got him out of there. Let's go for a ride. It's a beautiful day. It's fun.
Steve, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh. You had some real good ones in San Fran, huh?
Yeah. All of those, I know I told you I hadn't thought of these stories for a long time, but it's just like so many things. And I did have fun. I had fun.
Oh, I'm
Made
still
it
having a
fun.
good time. I love what we do. I love this job. There's nothing.
No, I'm talking about all the rescues.
Yeah. That too. Oh.
So it was interesting and I enjoyed it. And I do say that the more as I became more senior, I really wanted to look out for those guys, get them trained, make sure they were ready. I know that over the door in Cape Cod when I left, it was important for me. I had a guy that was really good at stenciling and it just said, know your limitations. And whenever you walked out of that door to go to do a flight or a case or whatever, just big letters, know your limitations. Nice. And
that's good advice.
But then they said, well, how do we know that? I said, haha, that's the thing. We're going to train. And I said,
we're going to get to the point.
Yeah, I said, the good news for you is I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do. The bad news for you is at this point, there's probably about nothing I won't do. So you guys are in trouble.
Oh, man. That's awesome. Game on.
Yeah. To the point where you guys, you must have done some wet drills.
Oh, yeah.
Swim tests. Who's going to administer the swim tests? The ASTs, the ASMs.
Yep.
We're running wet drills. And people would say, you ASMs, you're always getting free sneakers. Yeah, we get free sneakers. Yeah, we work out. I said, I tell you what. I said, I'll get you a pair of free sneakers if you can do the ASM swim test instead of the Coast Guard swim test. And he's like, what's that?
Yeah.
I said,
and then
well, instead of just your helmet and your flight suit and your boots and your one vest, to simulate your swimming from the helicopter, I said, we do 4 times the weight, 4 times the distance.
Plus underwater.
Just go ahead and do, huh? Plus the underwater. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, don't forget that. I tell you what, the guy watching me, he says, you have to demonstrate it. I said, sure.
Yeah.
4 vests, boots. It's a lot of weight, but that guy almost made it too. If it wouldn't have been for the underwater, he probably would have got a free pair of shoes.
Didn't quite pass it. Sorry.
Come back next year. We'll be here again.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. I love it. I absolutely love it.
But and I do. I was really surprised when you called and said, hey, let's talk about some stuff. And especially when I knew some of the folks that And
well, I'm glad you came on. I really am. Like I love talking about this stuff. I really do. It's kind of a ridiculous sickness at this point. But yeah, you know why I like it so much though, Steve, is because like I can relate. And like when you hear these stories, they're just I love it. Like I know the big waves. I know the cliff stuff you're talking about, and you get dropped off, you left on scene. I get it.
And it's, a lot of people, you talk to them, it's like, I have to tell you, it's like, at the time when we do that stuff, it's like, it's a job. That's what we do. That's what we're here for.
Yep.
It's like, decades later, it's like, that's freaking nuts.
You know what? Some of the stuff I look at back at it, like, woo, that was crazy. I wouldn't change it for the world though. Like you, I mean, I had a good time. I'm still having a good time. I enjoy it. I love what I do. So
I do have to say that I think that, when you start to go with your family to, I don't know, to Disney World or Universal, it's just, the rides just don't,
nope.
They're okay. It's a good ride.
Yeah. Oh, that was fun.
But,
that was good.
Okay. It was kind of fun.
So like total side note, you and I very comfortable in the water and, talking about like the movements of the waters and following the swells and stuff. My wife and I go on vacation and next thing I know, I'm in like this area and the guys in the boat are like, no, you cannot go over there. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's just barely above the water. And like, oh, the tide is too bad. And I'm like, no, it's not. So I end up over there. Mel's, my wife, is like, oh my God, what are you doing? I'm like, hon, it's fine. It's easy. I go over there, hang out, then I leave. No problems. But I guess they had a couple people really get hurt there. So
yeah,
whatever. When you've been trained the way we have, you understand what you're going into. So
right.
Pretty freaking
awesome. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Nope.
But it's fun to downplay it too. And it's like, I had a guy, he said, I was helping out a Boy Scout troop and they needed me to become an aquatics director. And they said, you got to do a swim test, Steve. All right, well, I'll meet the guy down there. And he said, like, yeah, you have to swim 500 yards and without a rest in the deep end, you have to stop and tread water for 2 minutes. Like, I think I can do that even at my age.
I wouldn't even question it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then he goes, now, are you ready for the second part? And they're like, sure. He goes, you have to leave from the shallow end, do a front crawl to the deep end, surface dive 11 feet, pick up the brick, and then swim back. And you only have 1 minute and 20 seconds to do it. So I do it and I come back and he goes, dude, you did that in like 35 seconds. And I'm like, did you need me to do it faster? I was just kind of going along. He goes like, no, a lot of people have trouble with that. And I'm like, okay.
Nice.
Later on, I told him I was a retired Coast Guard rescue swimmer. And he's like, oh, kind of like, what's that thing when the boss is like undercover boss?
Yeah. They're like, oh yeah.
It's all right.
Steve, that's awesome.
We'll be good.
Yeah.
But
holy smoke.
Anyway. Yeah, lots of good times.
If you want to tell a couple more, I'm all in. If you want to call it.
A lot of team stuff before swimmers and just Coast Guard in general. I think I retired before Katrina, I mean, well, let's just say I retired last century. It's how long ago it was.
And so, the greatest part about that is you retired last century in 1999, and you still remember these cases like they were yesterday.
Yeah, well, people will tell you I'm a cross between Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man and Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump. So whether that's a good thing or not, when you get to know
Oh.
April 1st, then that's just the way it is. But I think if I was to put a plug out for the Coast Guard in everything that they did in Katrina, you know, that's their standardization, and for people to come across, and that's more than even the rescues and everything. It's the, you've talked about how brothers and swimmers but the Coast Guard in general, aviation specifically, you could take a pilot from one place, a co-pilot from another place, a flight mechanic, and a swimmer from 4 different units. And within 5 to 7 minutes, you guys are all functioning standard and got each other's back.
Yep.
You never even knew the guy.
It's amazing.
And it's an amazing thing to be able to say and to be able to do that. And, you know, that's something I think that's probably the thing that I'll miss the most out of the Coast Guard, is that you had people that could do that kind of stuff. And in fact, I remember Steve was talking about, you know, how do you get your quals? Like if you're a swimmer, but I always kept my flight mech quals, and I actually became an avionicsman on the H3. I had all 3 positions, and we took off one day and I was all 3. And I was like doing the radio check, getting the flight thing, you know, swimmer thing in the back. Anyway, I had another swimmer that was flight mech qualified. So it's like, hey, how are we going to get our mins? And I said, I'll be the swimmer for you. You be the swimmer for me, and we'll just swap out. And I couldn't help myself on this one thing. It was like, I had always joked around about how the Canadians, when I talked about the SARTEX, you know, we had our standard is on hot mic, you know, go on hot mic, con me in, blah, blah, blah. This was H3 days, forward and right, you know, hold, paying out slack, all of that stuff. And
Really good.
the XO of the air station was flying in the right seat that day. And I said, I just got to do this. So it's like, I get up there and I'm like, in my best having fun voice, I'm like, right. I said, I'm like, got target in sight, forward and right, 25, forward and right, 20, easy forward and right. And then there's, you know, paying out slack. And it's like, this was the best thing. Instead of hold, it was like on top, stop. So we do the whole evolution, retrieve the basket and pull everything in. And you know how you debrief each evolution, you know, say, well, we did this, or we could do this better. The XO goes like, I wasn't sure that was standard terminology. We're just in the back of the H3, just like, you know, we got to have fun.
Got to have a good time. Man, I love it.
Hence April 1st.
April Fools.
Oh,
gosh.
I had to do it. It's just in me. But yeah, it was interesting, and I hope you have a great time interviewing with more folks.
Hey, thanks. When I get guys like you, it's not hard, because you guys just come with such good stories. I love it. I love listening to this stuff. So.
Oh, well, and so with that, you guys, you know, I'm guessing you went to E-City, swam there, rescue swimmer, and, you know, obviously I went to Lakehurst, was out in the field for 3-4 years before, you know, the swimmer program. And I always enjoyed the fact, because we wanted the SARTEX and we wanted to go to rescue swimmer school. And I made first class, and then I was in rescue swimmer school like 3 days later.
Wow.
And back then, you know, it was the Navy school, and it was pre-Marecki. Yep. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, and if we need to explain that a Navy guy died at rescue swimmer training school.
Yeah, most of us. Well, I know it very well. You know, we've talked about it with Butch Flythe, and we talked about it a little bit with Steve Hathaway. So.
Yeah.
If you haven't
But-
heard that, go listen to those. And that'll give you a full explanation as to what happened. So
Yeah. But that's the way they were training us down there. And again, they're just trying to stress you as much as they can in a swimming pool. And when you say about things that you remember, I ended up being the class leader because I was a first class petty officer, and we only had 15 in our class, and I think it was me and one other Coast Guard guy, and the rest were Navy guys. And I don't even know, they must still do Sharks and Daisies. Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with that. Yeah.
So basically, you're swimming in the deep end of the pool for a couple of hours, and all the instructors that day get to jump on you, and you just have to practice your holds and releases. Yeah. It's simple as that. And
I think they changed it. Well, I remember being called the bullpen when I was in swimmer school, or something to that effect, where you had everybody around you. You just kind of close your eyes, swim in a circle.
Yeah, you just swim in circles and do all your releases and stuff. And so this poor one Navy kid got pulled in the center, and the lead instructor, Petty Officer Mitchell, and for really old guys that went to Lake to Pensacola, they'll remember Petty Officer Mitchell. He basically looked like the guy from the Green Mile, or
just
he was just
a guy,
big guy. And he just took this kid into the center, and the kid was just screaming for a half hour, 45 minutes. And it's just echoing off of the pool walls. Please, I DOR. It's like, it was bothering me, and it still does. And it's 35, 40 years ago, like that poor kid. But we wrote on I talked with other swimmers. I said, some of these guys, they know when to stop, and some guys don't. And you need to watch those guys. And it wasn't too long after that incident happened down there.
Yeah.
And that's like you said, that's the kind of stuff you do in school as best you can.
Prepare you for the best you can for the real world when you get in there. Because, I say it more often than not, Mother Nature does not care. So it doesn't care what kind of training you've been through, and color, male, female. It doesn't care. It's going to jack you up. And if you're not mentally and physically prepared for it, then you are not going to win that battle. So.
Yeah. And so that's like like I said, you've got to get as much as you can trained and do whatever you can to prepare for, and then the other variables will take over.
Yep.
And I think I go and I watch sunsets now, and somebody asked me, what's your favorite sunset? And I said, in particular, we went on a guy in another sailboat. It was only like 15-foot waves, and it was right near being dark. And somehow or other, I knew at that point in my career that when I did that thing, and I jump out, still, swim over, and the guy's looking at me, and his eyes are huge, and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, you went off the boat. That's the ride. Come on in. This is nothing. Come on. We'll go. My name's Steve. Come on, let's go. You come in, and there we go. And I got him in the basket, easy breezy, and hooked up. And I'm telling you, if it could have been a movie, kind of going up, the sun's coming down, as I'm just spinning around on the hook as I'm coming up. I'm just going like, I think this might be one of the last times I'm coming out of the water, grabbing somebody with a decent swell or whatever. And I said, probably one of my favorite sunsets.
Wow. Oh.
And you know what? That's a great lead into saying goodbye.
You know what? I'm good with that. That was amazing. Steve, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all these stories. This has been an absolute pleasure to have you, without a doubt. So, if you ever think of any more and you want to share them, just give me a call. I'll get you back on here.
I'll start to bury those things again now.
As long as you remember that sunset. And you know what? I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna watch the sunset today and think about you. All right? Just saying. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Frye. And with that, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResQ.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResQ. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.